Now, what's the other context of what we're going through as a Canadian economy, Mr. Speaker? Well, the International Monetary Fund, far from the pretensions that we've heard in the few minutes of debate we've had thus far today on finance and budgetary matters, far from doing that, the IMF has actually said that Canada is among the worst among all industrialized economies, doing worse than Spain, doing worse than Italy, doing worse than the economies that are in trouble for the current account deficit on balance of payments. Now, what that means, Mr. Speaker, as you well know, that deficit means that we're importing finished goods, job-creating goods, and exporting raw materials. Mr. Speaker, this is something that the Conservatives have made a hallmark of and in their so-called economic management, that they're going to ship raw resources out of this country like there's no tomorrow. Just ship that out and import finished goods. Well, Mr. Speaker, now our current account deficit on balance of payments, which is a key indicator of the health of the Canadian economy, is going to be among the worst in the industrialized world, because this government doesn't understand that shipping raw resources out and importing the type of finished products, value-added products, means over time an erosion in the strength of the Canadian economy. So worse than Spain, worse than Italy. Not a single Conservative will address this issue because they are scared about Canadians finding out the truth about their shipping out of raw materials and what that has meant to the overall health of the Canadian economy, Mr. Speaker. So in this bill, there is nothing that addresses that fundamental weakness, nothing that addresses the fundamental weakness of industrial sector after industrial sector. Mr. Speaker, I come from British Columbia, where the softwood lumber industry hemorrhaged tens of thousands of jobs after this government signed the softwood lumber agreement, which we've called the softwood lumber sellout. Now, Mr. Speaker, what that did was, again, give the priority to the shipment of raw logs out of British Columbia and out of other regions right across the country. When we look at the forestry industry generally, raw log exports have increased substantially. And that's happened because this government signed yet again an agreement that would facilitate the shipping out of our raw materials. And what that means, again, Mr. Speaker, is that ongoing current account deficit getting worse and worse and worse. So, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about the overall health, the economic health of the Canadian economy on the eve of this government invoking closure in just a few hours on Bill C-13, we see a situation where we've hemorrhaged tens of thousands of jobs in the last few weeks, where we have millions of Canadians looking for work, where we have worse and worse quality of jobs because every job the Conservatives lose, if they replace that job, is replaced by one paid much, much less, almost $1,000 less a month, almost $10,000 less a year. We have a crisis in exports, Mr. Speaker, and the Conservatives love to stand in this House and say, well, we signed a bunch of agreements, we did some ribbon cutting. That's not an export strategy, Mr. Speaker, and they have clearly failed when you look at the current account deficit on balance of payments. Clearly failed worse than any other industrialized country. I mean, those are figures that tell the truth about what this government has done and what it has not done in dealing with the financial and economic challenges that this country faces.